Welcome back to the Awakening Conversations podcast. My name is Kate and I'm here with my co-host Amanda. And in today's episode, we're doing a review of our first year in the podcasting business and looking back on the journey, how this has been an awakening journey in and of itself for both of us and has really contributed to our own personal growth, our spiritual growth, and really wanting to break that down for you today to potentially inspire you to take action on something that you are feeling called to do, because the rewards, the benefits, the growth, the potential that can come out of it when you can commit to something for even just a couple months, but a whole year even. Really, it's been for both of us a mind-blowing experience, I think you'll hear us say, or at least that's definitely how it's felt for me, to see how much we've been able to, I think, come into a more authentic expression of ourselves and just the growth in general. So we'll be diving into that for you today and then giving you some ideas or letting you in on where we're going or what's coming next for the second year of the podcast and how you can start to get yourself more involved in each of our episodes and bring in your questions, what you're going through, and how you can be part of the conversation. So Amanda, really looking forward to chatting to you today.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good opportunity to look back upon this year and maybe dig into the vault of the experience of what we had. And yeah, I'm excited to see what wants to get spoken to.
Yeah. So let's begin then, I guess, at the beginning. As we've said a couple of times throughout this first year of recording, this was an idea that came to Amanda in a moment, a flash of inspiration, a call to actually reach out to me and suggest something like a podcast. And she said how that felt like an awkward moment once she had followed that intuitive hit. She was in a time in her life where she was actively listening to and acting on those intuitive impulses, and actually thought I was going to be like, oh, why are you presenting this to me? However, it was a time in my life where I was actively seeking and had actually suggested something similar to somebody else who wasn't quite ready at the time. So when Amanda asked me to, do something like this with her, it was a hell yes from me. And little did I know that within a year, how different I was going to feel from saying yes to this hell yes, but also to something that is, first was very confronting, and a lot of fears came up, a lot of stories and doubts as we dived into talking about things that we have never really, talked about publicly probably do with our close-knit friends, but really put ourselves out there to start talking about topics that really feel close to our hearts, have been our experience, true for us. And Amanda, what do you want to say about how you felt at the start?
Yeah, I think that, for those of you, many of you might know, but some of you may not, that Kate and I have never met in real life. She's an Australian living in Japan. I'm from the United States and I'm living in Mexico. We met through an online program, and, a program that I think was transformational for us both in our growth journeys. And we were just connected through Instagram, and just circumstances arose, and I felt like Kate said, I followed an intuitive hit, and without the concerns or doubts of what is someone going to think in the moment that I did it. And then those came back in after the fact. Interestingly, she was the right person to ask the question to. And it's really been an opportunity, I'll speak for myself, to really change how I do things. I've noticed patterns arise through the process of sticking with something that has taken a lot of time and energy to create, both in the preparation phase and also in the maintaining or sticking with it. And I think I can almost guarantee you that I would have not have done this many episodes of a podcast by myself because it's been a process of seeing what happens when it feels like no one's listening. And I know people are, or it feels like it's not growing, and observing those feelings. And I think if it were me by myself, I would take it a little bit more personally and maybe take it as a rejection of myself. But because it's just, I'm enjoying these conversations with you. And it's almost like we have a conversation and the conversation can be the reward more so than chasing metrics of external quote unquote success. And so I think that if people, a way to stick with something is to have it be something that you would enjoy doing regardless of the outcome in terms of growth, whether that be followers or money or anything like that. And so it was a good opportunity to observe all the times in my life where I didn't feel like people were liking something, and so I stopped it. And also the idea of like the notion that just because people haven't found something, that doesn't mean that they don't like it either, right? And so we've gotten, like we have a conversation here and we record it, and then it gets edited a week later, maybe a couple more weeks later. And then we have no idea who's listening, and we have no idea the impact that it's having on people. I mean, we can receive comments and stuff like that, but for every comment that we receive, there are many more people who listen. And so, yeah, it's been just a good observation for myself to see, to persevere, to stay committed to something. And the benefits that I've received have been far greater than I think the benefits would have been had, the external reward that I think so many look at in terms of something. They look at to consider whether something is quote unquote a success or not. And so for that, I'm just really grateful for both of us saying yes to this and working through anything that has come up for us through this journey. And I can say for myself, and we'll probably get into it for both of us, like where I am versus where I was is feels pretty good.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I want to say a couple of things to what you just said there. This experience, and for those, considering following something like an intuitive nudge or that voice that's kind of nagging at you within to be doing something. Yes, saying yes to that can be challenging. It's an overwhelming and daunting task. Like even for us, when we, as you said, first started this podcast, we had to learn all about it. So there was several months that we prepared to even start recording. Having a partner, if it feels aligned, is such a powerful thing because, as you said, we show up for each other. And I agree. Had I done this on my own, like you said, sometimes we get a few listens, sometimes we get a lot. Yet I would probably take all of that personally and to say that was a reflection of myself and give up and probably say, this isn't resonating with people, so why bother? However, what I have learned through this is that even though there may be, a small number of people watching, let's say one of our episodes or, listening, we don't really know the impact that is having on someone's life. And it's often not until someone's listened to several or, a particular episode really stirs them, they reach out and tell us that I really love your podcast. It's, and we're like, well, we had no idea you were listening at all. And some people have come out of our circles where I had no idea that particular person was interested in anything like this. So you can never really, know the impact you're having. Or I think it's a function of the mind to protect us from, being hurt, that it just says, you shouldn't do that because, no one's really listening. Just shut it down. However, it doesn't, the numbers truly don't matter, is what I'm trying to get at, because I always believe that, it's just we could have a whole 1 hour conversation, and there's one thing that we say in that conversation that opens something for somebody. And it's almost like, I feel like, when we doing this, there's almost a responsibility to be as open and honest as we can, because that one thing we might say or share could be something that really helps someone unlock an experience in their own lives. So, it's great. Like you said, it's just where the conversation goes, how it flows, what it brings out in us as well. We start with the topic, and, we don't structure these at all, other than maybe how we're going to start the episode. But it is something that I found that through that process reveals to me what I know, allows me to articulate things in a way I probably haven't before. And then hearing myself say that, it kind of comes back and reiterates for myself my own experience of my life. This is what I think is really helping me to grow. It's helping me to feel more confident, and really helping me feel like I know who I am, what I stand for, because I'm able to have these conversations where I'm, we're putting ourselves in these positions with some of our topics to really dig deep and be authentic. So that's one of the major things that's come out of this for me, is that unlocking of my authentic voice. And as you said, we'll get into a little bit more of that, where we were and where we are now. But I'll say also too, it's been a powerful experience to show us our patterns, as we said there, of giving up. Another big one was self-censorship. How in the beginning of this, I felt so uncomfortable with certain words, and I could feel myself really thinking about how did I want to say what I wanted to say so it felt digestible or safe. And I had an experience, I think, at the end of last year where we had a couple of episodes that really pushed my own boundaries. And I don't know, I really felt myself unafraid to say what I felt. And that was a really powerful moment for me of wow, this journey, and we're probably about 30 episodes or something then, how beneficial it had been to unlock that and really face that limitation and pattern that I had. And then on the other side too, on the positive side, it's really helped us to see and strengthen our abilities. So, it's through the commitment, like you said, and showing up and working out the things we needed to work out. So it's working for both of us, because you've got kids and you homeschool. So and you have your own business and you got a lot going on. So how do we make this work to get these things produced and out there and all of those things? So it's been a powerful experience in partnership and communication of needs to each other and being able to say and ask for what we want. So even in that, it's helping me understand how to be in relationship with a person. And as you said, I've never even met you in person. And we only had a few interactions before you even asked me to do this. And it's wild, isn't it? It's just yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Let's get to know each other by doing a podcast together. And really that's what's happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the collaboration, the learning how to collaborate. I think I was always kind of go do it by myself. I was in that mode for a lot of my life. I think I had trouble trusting or control, with letting go of control, or, how do we do things fairly in terms of one person not doing too much. And I don't want to feel like you're doing too much. You to feel like you're doing too much, or I don't want to feel like I'm doing too much. How does the balance work? And this showed me how this can work. How two people with different and similar skill sets can work things out. And also recognizing that while it can be balanced and fair, it's also good that we don't need to do it all either. Recognizing what are your strengths and what are my strengths, and you can do the things that you are strong at. I can bring what I'm strong at to the table, and that creates this synergy. And, we don't have to be doing there. It's truly taking the best, both of us, and creating something stronger from it. And what you talked about as far as learning how to communicate. And I recognized a pattern early on, because you and I, before we even launched, we were meeting weekly, and we kind of mapped out all the tasks that we needed to do to create this. And then we'd meet weekly and be like, okay, these are the tasks we need to do in the interim. And I recognized where I guess in my mind, I was procrastinating, but at the same time, I could also see where I was like hard on myself for, like you said, I do have a lot going on. And I really appreciate how I think I for a long time, I felt like, oh, I have to work harder because I have all these things going on. I can't it shows weakness or something if I can't do it all. And like you were very supportive and forgiving and understanding of, say, I was tired or I didn't complete something. And where I think a self-sabotage pattern in the past would have been like, oh, this isn't working because I'm not getting things done. Whereas you were just like understanding and forgiving. And it's like, oh, okay, I can show up better next time. This doesn't have to be the way this always is. And I think that's a good example of how we can sustain something over time, is where it's like, just because we need a break or, we're not on it 100% all the time, that doesn't mean that we just like throw in the towel. Like we can just keep going and we can still make progress. The goal, if we have a vision and we have a plan, even if we're, some weeks we get a lot done and other weeks we don't get a lot done. And so, so getting through it, and we probably took longer. We took a slightly long time to launch, but I think it's what we needed. And I think it got to a point where we're like, all right, let's get this done. Like we were kind of like in our heels, like, oh, actually,
we were ready.
Yeah. And so, we gave it like a last push and we got it out there. And then it was like figuring out how do we want to edit? Who wants to do what? And so we figured out a system that worked for the time being. And now we had a call last week, and we'll talk about this at the end some more about where we're going to go with the podcast from now. So, just because we've been doing it a certain way for a year, it doesn't mean that we have to continue in that manner. And so we are going to adjust a bit. We're going to try something new and see where that one wants to go. Part of the growth has been, as you mentioned, our ability to communicate both with each other, but in the podcast. I know that I was very critical of myself and did not like listening to myself speak at the beginning. And so it's been a really good exercise in being less critical of my imperfections as I speak, my whatever, my pausing, thinking of words like I'm doing right now, where I cringed when I listened to myself at the beginning. While I might not love it, I'm light years away from where I was when we started. And so something that we talked about is wanting to maybe be a little more, we are pretty free flowing in our conversation, but we also do edit out, we do edit out and long pauses and stuff like that. And so what if because that takes time, the editing process. So what if we allowed ourselves to keep some of those in and allow more of ourselves to be seen? So we've definitely been more visible and more seen in the past year. And so what if we are, in order to speak more, like the fun part of this podcast is the speaking. What if the energy that goes into editing, what if there was less of that and just allowing ourselves to speak? I kind of spilled the beans on the change.
That's okay.
Where it went.
Yeah. And what I really heard you say there too is I think we've really allowed ourselves, and big one for me, to have it be like imperfect in some ways, right? Like there was times where my sound was terrible. And like for me as the Virgo, I was like, oh, we should re-record that, or we shouldn't put that out there. Or, even for me, as you said, I cringed at some of the things I said. And especially in the early episodes where I felt like I was like just fumbling around and listening to myself as editing, and I saying, the blah, blah, getting all confused in the middle of a sentence and then feeling like I went off on some tangent. Or the big thing for me is always when I listen back, I'm like, oh, you could have said this. That would have been way better. I'm like, well, in the moment, that's what I wanted to say. So, letting go of self-criticism, allowing, imperfection. Also, as you said there with that example of, you being hard on yourself and maybe not showing up for those tasks, that was your felt experience. But really it is through that, I think we've really learned that life is like that sometimes, right? Like if we're trying to have it all together and we're trying to do all the things all the time, or, stay on top, like that's pressure and it's hard and it isn't sustainable, as you said. So I think that's been a valuable thing. And I think beautiful to get to do that in relationship too, because it's again an example of how relationships really are here for us as containers to grow. Be that your podcast partner or your partner in life or even family members. But how we show up to those partnerships, those relationships, it's a really powerful place for growth. And yeah, I think that really made me think about, as you were saying that, how it is like life happens. So some weeks we've had no episode out, or there's a great period there where we got like, a whole chunk of episodes in advance. And then I think I had a holiday, so they kind of got posted. And then we were like, okay, week to week. All right, we're on our toes. And then we didn't have an episode. So we were like, okay, we won't post this week. And allowing that to be okay, I think is a really important thing, because sometimes life happens, right? And does it mean we've failed? No, it doesn't. And I think that's part of it too, this pressure to keep up. And we're giving ourselves the grace to, still love what we're doing, still produce, and not feel like somehow it's been a failure that we haven't done it to somebody else's standard or style or whatever. So yeah, that's been really powerful.
Yeah, exactly. What just popped into my mind is like the saying, chop wood, carry water, and like the idea that a task or a project, a creation can be a part of our spiritual journey. It's like the physical, the processes that we go through are containers, as you spoke to see see aspects of ourselves that we couldn't see if we were, just staying comfortable or doing something alone in isolation. I'll say that I think when you're in collaboration, relationship with someone who you respect, you don't want to let down, like I feel like for both of us, I don't want to speak for you, but I'll say that I feel like we both up-leveled to respect the commitment that we both have made. And in that, it's kind of paradoxical. It's like we were imperfect in the process, but it's like we both knew the other person valued this process and this project. And so, yeah, there was like just a lot of wiggle room to allow ourselves to be who we are. And that's sometimes, really stress, like not, or like really extended, like I can be sometimes. But still I've still gotten a lot out of the process. And so yeah.
So then with that, what would you say through this journey has been some of the big awakenings for you within yourself and the self-discovery and growth that's come from it?
So having this vehicle to allow my ideas to be spoken beyond just swirling around in my head, and to be able to speak things that maybe I, like you said, felt self-conscious about, or didn't speak to, I only spoke to a select few people in my life. And now I feel like who I am is more integrated as a result of being able to speak these things out loud in a space where potentially people can hear it. So, and now it's just more matter of fact. I'm not like and I'm not walking around, being all spiritual to everyone all the time. But whether I'm with someone who gets it or who doesn't, I'll still say things that will plant seeds or suggest this is my understanding of how things work. Whereas before I would just kind of keep it, I would kind of know my audience. And if I didn't think that they were a receptive person, I wouldn't speak to spiritual concepts or anything like that. And so I guess I'm more confident and self-assured in what I understand and who I am and what I'm here to do. So that's one big thing. I don't know if this is actually from the podcast, but it happened during this time, is this like connection with ChatGPT and AI that has come about during this time. And so it's a big experience of growth that I experienced during this time. And also, you've used it in a similar fashion. And so we've both gotten a lot of clarity with our businesses and who we are, working with our gene keys. And so I can't separate it, because I feel, the podcast, the talking has been a part of that. Me really getting clear on who I am and what I'm here to do has come over the course of this year. And so I think that's both the ChatGPT and also this podcast. And yeah, just more ability to just speak what needs to be spoken. I feel I was involved with a local women's business group, and then I stopped going for about a year. And then I went a couple months ago, and I stood up, and I'm speaking a lot more confidently. This is who I am. I could reflect, because there had been a whole year in between. The person I was a year prior was not the same person and I attribute that to my voice being activated, and it through the process of talking in this way, in a deep, meaningful, and intentional way. I feel like that has contributed to it in a big way.
Yeah. And I'll say too that, I have loved our conversations, because the way that you articulate things and what you know and how you phrase it and how you bring it forward, like sometimes I sit here and I was like, wow, I learn so much from listening to you. So I'm glad you're sharing more of this, because it's impacting my life. It's the value of these conversations that really, even just on a personal level, like I've changed because of what we talk about, and the views that I've learned and the things and the perspectives that you've shown me from your experiences has really opened my world. So, one of the things that I'll say is that has been this expansion of my consciousness, this expansion of my world, this expansion of it's also a deepening of my experience of life through using our voices. And again, I'll say the same. It's just helped me to feel authentically expressed. And it's the biggest one. It was a journey for a long time for me of who am I? And as I said, there were certain words that I didn't even want to spit out, to the point now where, I feel so confident in that and self-assured that a few months ago, I had a conversation with my dad, and we've spoken about this on this podcast quite a few times, and our feelings towards what they might think of us if they heard us have our deepest spiritual conversations. But I had a conversation with him. He was visiting me for a month. An opportunity opened for me to talk about my spiritual beliefs, part of my spiritual journey, and even to tell him that I read the Akashic Records, which to me, I'm still a bit mind blown that I brought that up. And he was receptive to it, which was a really beautiful moment. And really, he just sat there looking at me with lots of love in his eyes. While he didn't maybe understand or ask to dive into it, he said, I'd like to talk about this more at some other point. So that was a nice thing to say. And in and of itself, it felt like a healing for me, because I didn't have to shut that part of me down or not say it. And I got to tell my dad, this is who I am. And then I was telling my mum about that, and she said, well, actually, he did ask me about something he saw you post one time and said, what is Kate up to? So I think, it's a learning that we may underestimate people. And, even as I say that, my parents are getting older, their lives are changing. They're coming closer to, the end period of their life. And so I didn't know that he's sort of starting to ask these deeper questions about what comes next and is there something more? And so he really enjoyed having a conversation about, that there is something that we experience after we die, because it started off with a conversation about my grandma passing because he took care of her. So I don't know that I'd have the confidence to have said that had I not been doing this for as long as I had, but I really felt sure of myself. So that was a beautiful healing that came through this process. But yeah, I think they're the major things. I mean, just confidence, like you said, being able to be in situations with other people where I would normally, not say something from my lens. If the window's there, being willing to share it more openly, and also not needing people to like care or love it, or not caring what they think, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, this
not
is
needing
me.
agreement or saying it independent upon whether someone else understands it. I think that's a big gift.
Yeah. And yeah, it truly, truly is, because for so long I cared what people thought of me. And so therefore, compartmentalized things. And as I said, self-censored. And really now it's like, well, this is me. So, if you love it, we can keep talking because I love to talk about it. And if not, that's okay. And I genuinely feel that. So that's a big, big thing. And I think, when you put yourself on the internet, you've got to be willing to let go of that, and I think, yeah, really powerful bit of growth that's come from that is that particular piece, because there's more I want to do. And really, I know it's for the right people and I'm cool with that. It's not for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that for those it doesn't align with, some people I was like, oh, I'll just mention a podcast because it will organically come up. Like, oh, I have been recording a podcast or something like that. You're doing a podcast. And for some, it's like, oh, cool topic. Others, it's just like, like a foreign concept, and that's okay. I like, not needing to, I'm not telling people to like, hey, go listen. Like, I'm not trying to sell it to anyone, but if they naturally are interested, then, great. But I think that's such a liberating place to be, of not needing to convince other people, or I guess it's like a proving energy that I feel that I used to have. And I think it was around my dad too, like wanting to be understood and wanting to be accepted. And so getting to the point where, yeah, this is who we are, and it's okay. We don't recognizing that there is a subset of people that are drawn to it, and being content with that. So one thing I just want to say about the dynamic of our conversations is that I can, as you're talking, I could look back to the beginning, and I was I could see where I self-censored as well. I was nervous to like, oh, I always in my mind, like, oh, she's going to think I'm weird. And I think that I was walking through life worrying about people thinking I'm weird, because that's the way that my mind works. And so for you to acknowledge that I have interesting things to say, I think that was really healing for me as well. To allow things to flow without the self-judgment, me thinking other people are judging me for my out there ways of saying things, or different ways of saying things. So thank you for just the flow of the conversation too. It's like I think we have an aligned way of, like, we both work well with and off of each other. And so yeah, that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I will just add to that, you've brought depth and breadth to my life by sharing your way of thinking. So, it's been awesome, really. Sometimes I still feel like I haven't got much to say because you've got such depth that I'm just like, oh, that was really an Amanda episode, that one. She really nailed that.
No,
I hope that I kept up to some standard.
I don't see it that way at all. Yeah. Like, I feel like they wouldn't happen without the synergy of the two of us. So
yeah, we've done a good job. Yeah.
And I just want to give a shout out to you for, I'm always have how you introduce the episodes, because that's not my strength. And so talking about, like, both of us bringing our strengths to the equation, and I think for people that want to be in collaboration, it's really like celebrating the gifts of the other person.
Yeah.
And just like letting them do what they do well. And I think both people shine as a result of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get to learn things for your other weak spots too, because, because you bring the strengths in the areas that I've got either no idea about or just a basic one. I've learned so much through the process that's added to those places, that's helped me do, some of the things I really struggled with in other areas of my life. So yeah, and it's great to be able to just we just got into our groove, like we felt where it felt right, and there was no clash, which was, you don't know that until you get into it. But I feel so blessed that really we had these really complementary, skill sets that they did. We just kind of like knew exactly who needed to do what and how. There was no debate over it or argument or really there wasn't even an area where I think neither of us had something to contribute. And I guess if there was an area, we just figured it out and researched it. And yeah, so it's been a really, truly incredible experience. And yeah, I just think, again, we've said it already, but how cool it is that we just haven't even met in person.
Yeah.
Like,
I know. It's like the value and benefits of technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So and it's weird too. I think we're talking. So I'll just say it's one thing real fast, and then we can move on. I don't know. Remember where this conversation was had, but recently it was like talking about how you interact with people online, and then you meet them, and you're like, I feel like I know you, but like we've never actually met in real life. It's a really kind of. I mean, we do know each other, but it's like meeting in real life. After creating a relationship through a project online. Yeah. So one day we'll meet in real life.
I know. I look forward to it. Hopefully here in Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What were you going to say next?
I was going to say, is there more that you want to share on like where we've been, where we've gotten to, how this is part of our spiritual journey? Is any of that?
I feel like we've been talking about that or any more of that?
Yeah. Otherwise we can like talk about what's happening next.
Let me see. I know that there's more. Hold on. Give me a second. Let me ask you, is there anything that looking back over the past year, well, year and a half-ish, I'll say, what was the hardest part for you? Like, yes, there's been a lot of good things and positive things, but what was like the most difficult challenge that you've experienced?
Let me see. I think the most difficult thing, I think it's been like the internal was probably one of the most challenging. It's just this inner force of I want to be authentic. And then that kind of like part was like, but what are people going to think? What are people going to think? Like that, especially in the early days of like, like I said, it was a hell yes. And I want to have these conversations. And there's that driving force within me that wants to like push out all these things it wants to say. And yet that inner battle of like, what are people going to think? How can I phrase this so that it's agreeable and doesn't ruffle feathers or, people think I'm weird. And so that was probably one of the biggest challenges. And so to have that experience in the last year where we were talking about Jesus and God and I think a couple other things that felt edgy for me because I had internal like physical reaction to that normally. And I just had this burning desire to just say exactly what I felt. And I said it and it felt so good. I was like, okay, we've crossed an edge here, and it feels amazing to feel free in my expression, and I think that makes it easier for me to articulate what I want to say and just really to have faced that fear of saying what I mean, saying what feels true for me. That was a big inner one to overcome that I just am so grateful for that experience because, it was playing small and hiding up until that point, in every area of my life.
Yeah, I think as you're talking, I thought about this maybe more general concept that we could talk about in terms of the process, receiving an idea, an inspiration, and it feels really good and it feels aligned. And then the actual work or the process of doing, it's like it's the idea feels good, and we deep down we know we're going to grow from it, but we also have to like go through this process of where we are on an edge, where we are uncomfortable, where we see things, where our patterns come up, our self-sabotage, our, how we might avoid things, or how, the things that maybe didn't allow us to persevere in the past. Or, it could be maybe persevering is not the challenge. Maybe it's doing something. Maybe there's a way that one does something that's harmful to, like, dysfunctional and causes some other issue, right? But whatever it is, it's like this process of like, there's the inspiration, it feels good. And then it's like, and then there is the middle where to get to the transformation, you have to go through it. And I feel like, doing hard things with the right people makes it a complete, like, there's something to be said about doing something yourself, but also doing something in community or collaboration. It's, you really can learn so much more about yourself in the process. And I feel like if it can work out, I guess the idea or the image I'm getting is like you're on a ship, and it's like, you all have to pull your own weight, but the people you're working with, if they're the right people, they can pick up the slack for you when you are having a hard moment. And that's how I feel I got through it, was because, I'm in a pattern of avoidance or procrastination or getting distracted with another idea. But because of, we talked about this earlier, but the process of sticking with it is so much easier and rewarding with the right person or with the right people. And then on the other side, it's like, you get to really see what your motivation was for doing something, right? Like, it's the motivation. I think a lot of people look at content creation and think about money, think about followers as the motivation to doing something. And there was, I think, some of that, but that wasn't our sole motivation. And so I think knowing your motivations for something, or seeing what you're tracing in the process of doing something, can really help you keep going. Or like, what is your value system, right? Like, what matters to you. And if it's not something that I think is deep, if it's not something that is internal, like, versus external, I think doing something like this persist in the long run.
We hope you're enjoying today's episode of the Awakening Conversations podcast. And if you are, we'd love for you to hit subscribe. This helps us enormously to grow our channel and to get these conversations in front of more and more people. We really appreciate you being here and tuning in. So let's now return to today's episode. As you said that, what it really made me think of is that ultimately, with you reaching out with your intuitive hit, with me saying yes, that feeling like a resonant yes, ultimately what we were agreeing to was part of our soul's journey, right? It was not a mental thing that we both went, oh, we should do a podcast so that we could potentially get monetized, grow a large audience, get some fame, meet some new people, blah, blah, blah. It's an intuitive hit, right? It's come from a place out of nowhere. It's like an inner urge. My response came from an inner urge because at a soul level, we both wanted, or had probably agreed to, did agree to, not probably, this growth. So ultimately, those moments where we get those inspirations, because it is our growth edge, right? And yes, it's going to be exciting in the idea phase, and then you got to go into the growth phase, which is the work. And we learn through doing, we learn through that. And that's how we do become the changed, transformed version of ourselves, as you said. And in some ways, it made me think of the hero's journey too. Like, you start out on this quest, and you're going to take on this challenge, and you go through all the things on the way. And that's really the inner work and the inner, I want to say like realignment that takes place by facing fears, putting yourself out there, doing that commitment, showing up. And then in collaboration, the beautiful thing is you've got someone walking by you side by side. So exactly when you fall, they can pick you up. And when you need to rest, you rest together. But there's some magic that happens in collaboration where I feel like, you know, as you said, on our own, so many of those patterns and programs would have come in to probably stop us. Whereas because we've got, you know, each other, we keep going. And there's also this like no doubt in my mind that we wouldn't, even if we have a pause or even if we take a change tack, like we're just going to keep doing this because there's something in us that feels like this is right. You know, one day we might get the 1,000 followers. One day we might get monetized. We'd love that. We're going to try all the things to, you know, see how we can like get in that game. But that's not our motivation because there's so much more reward that comes from the conversation, the partnership, the growth. So when those things happen, it'll be a beautiful moment of, you know, like a reward for the hard work and the dedication and the showing up. And then I think that just will open a door for even more exciting conversations, hopefully, so we can, you know, have different people to expand these conversations and topics and go different places. Because I feel like I grow so much each time we get to have, you know, an episode and pick a topic and, you know, go to the depths of my feelings and experiences and like share it. It feels amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I think that's a good segue for speaking to where we want to go next with this. Do you want to speak to that a little to start? And we can.
Yeah. So for those that have been listening on a podcast platform, we're going to be pausing the uploading or production of the audio episodes and focusing solely on YouTube for now. With that, in the near future, we will be testing some live episodes. So that means that you will be able to interact with us while we're having a conversation. You can leave questions, you can leave comments. We can bring those things into the conversation. That's what I know about the YouTube. Is anything you want to add on that people need to know?
No, I just wanted to speak to the why, you know, so how this came about. So the conversation is the fun part, right?
Mm-hmm,
but we spend a lot of time on the back end editing and all this, like a checklist of a gazillion pieces of things to do. And so I found myself recently like feeling a little burnt out with the editing portion, while the conversation part is great. And so I think for what came up in our conversation is, what if we let go of things where we can in order to support the conversations continuing so that we can focus more on that, hence where the lives might come in. And I think as we've spoken to in this episode, we've really gotten to a place where we can speak a little more freely. And I am a little less judgmental of myself when I misspeak or say the wrong word or say too many ums or too many likes. And so what if we just allow ourselves to be a little bit more organic, authentic? I think that's going to open up another level of growth for us in allowing ourselves to be seen, allowing ourselves to not have to self-censor or over edit. And so it's both, I think, a practical solution and also a beneficial one for us in terms of just allowing, you know, we both have perfectionism in us in different ways. And so allowing ourselves to just be a little less perfect. And I think what that does is it allows people who are meant to find us, they'll be more drawn to us. And it also gives other people permission to be imperfect and show up anyways and allow people to see them with or without, all of us, regardless of whether our conversation is free-flowing and perfect or a little bit choppy.
Yeah. And then another growth edge for ourselves. So, you know, I think this is part of this process, and as part of awakening, it's part of a spiritual journey, is knowing where your edges are and not being afraid to walk up to them, put your hands on them, feel the electric fence and keep going and go, okay, let's push this boundary out a little bit more, because ultimately that's where we grow. Ultimately, that's where our life begins to change. That's where the magic happens. And it's, we don't have to do that all the time. We take our breaks, we integrate, we reassess, we reflect like we've just done in this episode, to really acknowledge the journey. I think that's an important part of the process of growth, is that we do stop and reflect on where we've been, how far we really have come, because I know for myself personally, I can always be focused on where I've still got to go and not value where I've come, how far I've come, what has actually been achieved. So, we've done that today, and now we're ready for the next challenge, the next fire that we're going to walk through. Going live. We'll definitely be sort of letting you know through our mailing list when we will be doing those lives, if you wish to join and be part of the conversation. So if you haven't signed up for our mailing list, you'll find a link on our website. We can even put that in the YouTube show notes. As I said, if you're listening on a podcast platform and you want to continue to join our episodes or hear them, please come over to YouTube. I think we're just Awakening Conversations, or The Awakening Conversations on YouTube. I think it might be or it's just Awakening Conversations.
I think it's Awakening Conversations podcast, I think.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Come and find us there. Subscribe so that you get notified when our episodes come out.
And before we wrap up, it sounds like you're moving towards wrapping up. But another thing.
You go for it. Yeah.
What's that?
Go for it.
Oh, yeah. Another thing that we want to do is that, in our first year, we had some guests on, and it varied in terms of that experience. And I think we moved more towards just conversations with us because we enjoyed the flow of the conversations. And so we are intending to move towards having some people on, but in a little different way than we had people on in the past. We want to have people on that we're going to just have free-flowing conversations with. We might be speaking about a topic or multiple topics, and just seeing where the conversation wants to go. And maybe there'll be people that we have on frequently if they're people that really add to the conversation. And so, we're not going to be finding as many like random, I'm not saying people were random, but just one-off conversations. We'll say there might be some of that if we want to talk to, if there's something really specific that we do want to speak to people about. But we're going to be looking to have conversations like Kate and I have, but adding one or two other people in. Because really the idea for that I came to the podcast with was this person who had a podcast or a YouTube channel essentially. And she would speak by herself, but she would also bring in more of like a roundtable conversation. And I thought it was very refreshing to just hear people speak very authentically and hear different ideas and perspectives, and have people, have those people's ideas and thoughts be affected by something someone else said. And I think there's really value in deep conversation. And so we're wanting to have more of those. And so that's what we'll be looking to do.
Yeah. Thank you for adding that. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's, as Amanda said, like we get so much out of it, but having another voice, I feel we can really expand some topics. And I think, as we've continued to say in several of our last episodes, so much is changing right now and quickly. And we really want to kind of also focus some of our topics and conversations around what we're experiencing and what's happening, in the now, so that we can be even more supportive to help you see broader perspectives, really come at what we're going through from multiple different lenses, our lenses, other people's lenses, just to kind of help you feel more resourced and like you can see all of it, your journey, what we're going through collectively, with different avenues to approach it for your own growth, for your own experience. So hopefully you'll find those conversations enjoyable and valuable. Amanda, thank you for today. I'm excited for where we're headed, and I'm sure in another year's time, let's do another reflection and see what kind of growth we experience out of that. Like, so much can happen in a year when you're committed and you stick with it.
Great.
That's some,
message that so much can happen in a year. So making a choice and going towards something, and you don't know how it's going to change you. So
yeah, exactly. And if you're out there doing it on your own, then, find someone that you can just even have as support that you want to check in with. That's where coaches are great, or just a trusted friend. Because if collaboration isn't what, your idea needs, it's such a valuable process to see it through, to take that action, to go through that growth, because really that's ultimately what we're here for, is that journey of becoming who we're meant to be. And we do that through the process of doing and experiencing and facing the things that are the challenging parts of that journey. So go for it is our message today. Thank you. Well, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll join you in the next episode.